I just have to check the time first and foremost, and I want to make sure that I have everything set. So with that being said, let's get started. I would like to start with a small exercise, and that small exercise is just taking 3 deep breaths. So we're going to do this together. So first breath is long, deep breath in and deep breath out. One more. And the third one. So the reason for these 3 breaths, which could have been 6 or 10 or 30, is because it just gives us a moment to calm our minds down, de-stress, get our heart rate and our breathing in sync, and give a little brain break to be able to absorb what I'm going to talk about now. So the subject that we're going to talk about, mental health, well-being, it's very dear to me, and I'm super humbled to be able to share my journey with you. So some, when they hear this, might be provoked, some might be shocked, some might get sad, and that's all okay, because all feelings are allowed. So my hope for the people watching and the people who's going to watch is that you will keep an open mind, an open heart, and be curious. So not just through this session, but in life in general. So the presentation will take about 40 minutes. Unfortunately, Zoom only allows for 40 minutes, but it's just to log in again. It's the same link as from the beginning. So if there's any question, please shout, and yeah, you can write me in the chat as well, and you can write me afterwards as well. Yes. So let me see if I can switch slides here. I'm testing new software, so bear with me. I call this course Become Empowered from Victim to Victorious, because for me, it has been a journey from victim to victorious. And by that journey, I became super empowered. So there's the why, the how, and the who, or the when, not the who. Who will be me in this instance. But I will share some perspective from my own life. And some things I would like to start off with is like, I want you to ask yourself questions as we go along. Like, ask yourself, how are you showing up in your own life? What are your thoughts about yourself and others? How are you criticizing yourself and others? Are you in control of your thoughts? Are you in control of your feelings? The circumstances are surrounding you, or are they controlling you? I think it's a super important question to ask and look within. So what beliefs do you have about yourself? What beliefs do you have about others as well, and your life in general? So these subjects I'm going to be addressing, it really takes courage to look inside. I applaud all who does it, myself included. So with that courage comes vulnerability, and that is why I have chosen to be vulnerable to you. And thank you for letting me. Okay. So let's get started. The why, background and circumstances. So my background is I come from a generations of people who were really hurt, and hurt people. And it was very much about poverty thinking, lack, doubt, criticism, and all of these kind of poverty thoughts, lack thoughts. So this was ingrained with me very early on. And I know that the people who were in my life, my family, my mother and so forth, they raised me with all that they could. So I don't blame anybody. It's more of the why did I have this belief system when I went forward? And why did I allow a lot of things to happen and allow a lot of people into my life? So there's the beliefs, and then the codependency. Codependence in a simple form means that you are more attached to what other people feel about you and think about you than you are to how you feel and think about yourself. So you're giving all your power away. You are so depending to get validated from other people because you're not validating yourself. And what it actually is, it's lack of self-love. But it is a strategy that you use when you are raised among certain people, certain parents. It can be alcoholic, narcissist, and so forth. So the why I started changing was I have come up with this sentence that when the pain of changing became more bearable than the gain of suffering. And what I mean by that is because changing is hard. So the whole transformation is a certain events of different changes, right? And the gain of suffering is this false happiness belief that we have. So we stay in something or in some sort of mindset, even though it's not nice, it hurt us, it's not good for us, but we know it, so it feels comfortable and safe. So that's the explanation of gain of suffering. And I want to say the thing about love, you have to give it to yourself first and foremost, but you also got to get to a point where you actually understand what that means in terms of every aspects of your life. So it's not an easy journey necessarily, but it's also very fun and very educational. So my journey, which I'm going to be sharing and going to take the perspective from, is that when I was 16 years old, I had my first experience of sexual abuse. And by that, it wasn't a rape, but it was abuse in the sense that I was working in this burger joint, and I was doing the dishes one night. We were just finishing off, and the friend of an owner who was 40 years my senior, I was 16 at this time. Suddenly, he was helping with the dish, and suddenly he was holding me by my face and sticking his tongue in my mouth. For a 16-year-old girl, that is pretty scary. And luckily, I was able to, keep a clear head, push him away, and tell him, don't touch me, and I will contact the police if you touch me again. So he didn't. But the point of the story was, when I left that place, I never spoke about it to anybody for 25 years. I was so scared of telling my mom because I felt like a failure all the time, unworthy, unlovable, and I couldn't do nothing right. I wasn't good enough. So I always had a perspective or a belief set, a self-image that said, whatever happens, you are the wrong who's wrong. And I was so scared of my mom's reaction. So I just chose to stick it inside and just not talk about it. So like suppressing all the feelings, like the anger, fear, the doubt, everything. And this was not the only and first time I did that. So going forward, when I was 17 years old, I was raped by a male friend. And I'm calling it a friendly rape, which can, of course, provoke some, because how can a rape be friendly? It was in those terms that he wasn't violent. He was a good friend. I did find him attractive, but the thing is, there were no consent. And the thing is, it happened so it started happening while I was sleeping. And nobody ever should force themselves to anybody else. And because I was so young at the time, he was a little bit older than me, but I was so confused about this. I was really confused. Even when I realized what was going on, I was confused about what is going on first, and why is he doing this, and do I want this? And the thing is, if you're in doubt, it's always a no. So going forward, again, I didn't tell anybody, I didn't talk to anybody at all, and I just turned it inwards. Very confused, very felt very unworthy. Yeah. So it suited my beliefs, right? So what then happened was I got pregnant from that. And a week after I was 18 years old, I had an abortion. And that was with the help of my doctor, because I was actually a little too far to get it. But because I couldn't tell my mom, and she had to sign because I was under 18, I had to, he had to fix the papers so it was possible. And I had nobody who could support me in that period, because I was so afraid of opening up and being blamed and criticized for what had happened. And that led me to some very self-destructive behaviors, not so much in physical, but more like for how my life kind of took a turn, but how it kind of evolved, because I kept reconfirming this kind of mindset and this kind of belief. So when I was 19 years old, I was in a very narcissistic relationship with a man who himself were hurt and he was suffering. So he didn't know anything else but to do, I think his pain was projected onto me. And because I felt like this was kind of my, now I had my own, we moved in together. Felt like I'm starting my own family. I can finally have the life that I wanted. And because of that, because I so deeply wanted to be loved, because I was so deeply attached to somebody loving me and not being able to do that myself, I became so depending on him to validate me. And he could do anything, and I would just take it. I had no boundaries at all. So it came to the point of I felt so broken down that I felt I had nowhere. There was nothing for me to be in this world for. So I did try attempt, and I'm laughing because the point of it, you will understand why I'm laughing. I tried to take my own life, and I'm not going to go into details with this, but the reason I did this was because I thought that I had no place on this earth and no one would ever love me. I was unlovable. I was convinced. So what happened was I couldn't. I just simply, and of course today I'm really glad because I'm here, but I didn't walk away from that feeling like a victim or feeling, well, I did in a sense, but I didn't walk away feeling sorry for myself. I more felt like a failure. So you can't even do this right. You're not even good enough to so that's of course that's a victim thinking as well, but it's a different sort of victim thinking. So moving forward, I'm going to speed this up a little. When I was 29 years old, after giving birth to my son, I suffered from a severe postpartum depression. And first, I couldn't understand why. I was like looking everywhere else outside of me for understanding why, and having all of these kind of treatments, until the moment I realized this is not going to go away. There is something inside you need to work on, and there's some things you need to let go of from your past. So I would say that in 2008 was when I started my journey, but it has come in levels and it's come gradually. So it's been in different kind of areas. So I see it as, even though I wouldn't wish it upon anybody, I see all of my live events, I see them as presents wrapped in pain. Because the thing is, there's a lesson in everything, but it's our responsibility to take that lesson and understand what we can use it for. And I will tell you this, there's no big war giving to small soldiers. There just isn't. So you're not getting more than you can carry. And it's not unfair either. I know that people want to say it, but it's unfair. I had that feeling too. But the thing is, if you say it's unfair, then you have to ask yourself, who do you wish it upon then? It was given to you for a reason. And I know it can sound harsh, but be proud. That means you're a super strong individual. That means you have the capability of going through this. And not everybody has. And that's why we sometimes look upon some people and think, they have it so easy. They have it as they're supposed to have it, because that's what their capacity is. Well, moving forward, when I was 40 years old, I was physically assaulted, violently assaulted by a man that I was seeing at the time. And it was a pretty traumatic experience. It wasn't as bad, I'm saying it was bad, but it wasn't, I could walk from there and I could get away from there. So it was 2 bended ribs, it was 2 ripped up nails and some bruises, but it wasn't more than that. So at this point, I've of course thought about, why does these events and keep happening? Why do I keep attracting these kind of people? But the thing is, I was still not looking enough inside myself. I was more like, I had an idea that, it's because I'm too nice. But at this point, I hadn't really faced the fact how severe codependency I was experienced, how severe my attachment to other people were, and especially around men. And I think the reason for the thing about men comes back to something in my childhood, and I'm not going to go in details with that, but I hadn't really faced up to that yet. So when I was 42, December last year, 13th of December last year, that was a Monday, I left a 1.5 year relationship with a man that I thought were in many ways the love of my life. It had been very intense. And now I can see how toxic and unhealthy that relationship was. I left because my body couldn't take it no more. I was in so much pain and doubt and anxiety. And I started, this was when it really hit me. It was like, Louise, you are living your life according to other people, what you can do for them, how they treat you, I had no opinion. Everything was about this man. And that is a part of codependency as well, is that you give your power away to everybody. So I really had to take a deep, hard look inside and decide, because it is a choice of what to do. So I decided that I'm not going to be the victim no more. I'm going to stop telling myself that story, and I'm going to be victorious. So yes, some of the things took me 25 years before I was able to talk about it. And suppressing feelings of anger and disappointment and fear, because I just accepted the fact that this was my life, this was for me, and not thinking, what can I do to change it? Also, that I deserved it, because I had that self-belief and that self-doubt. And by this kind of thinking, I kept attracting circumstances and people who could make me into a victim. So it is all about the stories we tell ourselves. And what we also have to look at is, are you the victim? Are you the hero? And if so, who's the villain? And what if we sometimes flip the stories upside down? What happens then? So instead of me walking around and blaming everybody else, pointing fingers and keeping still attached to them by having the stories and letting those stories define me, then who is the villain? And Am I not the villain for allowing that in my life? It's interesting, and it's also a little bit provocative. So let me just see here. Why is it doing that? Sorry. Yes, here we go. So, are you a hostage of your past, or are you a host for the future? We hold on so strongly to what happened, pointing fingers, as I also did. And by that, we keep the hurt feeling intact. So the event is over, but we keep feeling the feelings of the event. And that's also the victim part. That's why we keep recreating things that will suit those feelings, because we keep those feelings intact. And I will say this, it might not be your fault what happened. I don't think it was my fault that someone chose to beat me, but it is my responsibility on how I will proceed from that, what I will use it for, and which kind of actions I will take. And I think we should all ask ourselves, when we are so attached to something that happened in the past, why are we? Why? Why do we need it? Can't we tell ourselves a different story? So for me, the changes began on a larger scale when I started taking my responsibility for my life and how I want to be present in the world, looking inwards and forgiving. Not accepting, but forgiving and letting go. Because in order to forgive yourself, in order to release those shackles that is held upon you from your past, you have to forgive. And that is also yourself, first and foremost. So there's this victim's ABC. I love it because it's so simple. So there's ABC, and that's accuse, blame, and complain. This is the victim's ABC, and you can always recognize the victim, yourself included. I was a victim for many years, and it was everybody else who was wrong because I was a nice person and they were doing me wrong, and they weren't nice to me, and they were taking advantage of me, and I was unlucky, and at one point I even thought I was cursed. So this belief system, this self-image, I projected that to all areas of my life. And you cannot have a happy life if you're always in a victim state, because you will always try to look for things to be victimized of. So my choice, as I said before, was to go from victim to victorious. Yes, I think we're okay with time. Yes, we are. Cool. So what is the narrative for you? I am, or I feel. Like I said, all feelings are allowed. Embrace them, allow them. Don't resist them, because we all have all feelings like anger, frustration. Everything is allowed. Don't resist them. It just makes it worse. And oh, okay, it says Zoom will end in 10 minutes. So let's see, then we will just log back on. So, but the narrative of I am or I feel is like I am sad or I feel sad. I am sad, you identify with the feeling. It becomes what you are. Or I feel sad, you experience the feeling. So my point is, don't become the feeling. When we become the feeling, they control us. We give our power away, and it controls our thinking and our behaviors. So hold your power, hold your frame. So instead of reacting where the feelings are controlling you, respond where you control your feelings, and then observe. Try just to observe yourself for a week. Be curious. How are you being present? How are you treating others? How are you treating yourself? And breathe. Always breathe. So I think, let me see. Yes. I made a few examples of what is your thinking and habits. Are you reacting like the victim's ABC? It wasn't my fault, victim. Why are you like this? It's very much hero, right? And trying to point the other guy to be a villain. Or why are you saying that also over in the villain, like the other is a villain? Responsive is more curious. It's like, I hear what you're saying, and then can you elaborate? Or how come you think like this? You open up for actually listening to the other person. So when, or the how to start changing. I'm trying to get Zoom to see, but I think we have to log on again when it is. So for me, I narrowed it down to 4 simple steps of changing. I think first and foremost, ask yourself, like contemplate on your own showing up, reaction, responding, thinking, and so forth. And how much trust do you have in terms of how you are present? Because trust requires vulnerability, and to be vulnerable, you have to be courageous. Decide and take action. So everything starts with a thought. Many people are so controlled by fear, and the thinking like it would be so much easier if everybody else changed. Like, then I could just stay the way I am, and wouldn't it? But if everybody thinks like that, that's why we have the world we have now. So the thing is, you have to look at your problems, and then you have to look at what is the common denominator in your problems. Could it be you? And that's the thing about my story, that like the red thread for the story is I was always the victim, because that was the thing I told myself. And that's why I allowed these people to be in my life and to treat me like that. I could have walked away, even when there was like 1,000 red flags blinking and hitting me in the head, but I didn't. So that is a super important point, is the flipping belief. So what do you believe in life, about yourself, about others, about work? Ask yourself, be curious, and how much of your thinking is negative? Studies has actually shown that people would rather think a negative thought than not think a thought. I think that is fascinating. So energy flows where focus goes. That's just basically it. And then another little exercise. I want you to try and imagine or think of something negative. It can just be something simple that irritates you about. It can be a person, a thing, a problem, whatever. Just something negative. Something we all have that critical voice inside our head, and we all have this negative thinking sometimes. So I want you to imagine something that is negative to you. And then I want you to smile. Big smile. What happens? You can't think negative when you're smiling. It's simply how we are put together as human beings. I know we say we can multitask. That's a big lie. People can't do 2 things at once. So it's a very easy way to try and stop those negative thoughts when they come, and they will come, but don't let them spiral. Like, don't let them become bigger and more and go down that road. Stop them before they even get a hold of you. And that's the thing. We can control our mind. Our minds, it's a muscle and it's a tool. So use it for something good for yourself. And then it's a mindset. Like, how do you talk to yourself? How do you talk about other people? Like that critical thing, that critical voice you have inside your head. So I call mine Fuckavilla because she fucks with my mind and I don't like her. And when she comes, and she does come still, even though I've done a lot of work, I tell her, welcome. I don't have time for you right now. So really think about how you talk to yourself first and foremost. And think about if you talk to yourself in a way you wouldn't talk to other people, why in the world are you talking to yourself like that? It's love yourself first, then you're next. So what you can do, and that's provocative, is take a pen and paper, write down some of the worst things you say about yourself, and you go and you read it loud to a stranger or a child on the street. If you won't talk to strangers, even strangers like this, why are you talking to yourself like this? You are the one you're going to spend the most time with in life. You gotta like yourself. You gotta date yourself. You gotta start loving yourself, you know? So then there's the repetition. Repetition reaps results. Be persistent. Be committed. Like commit to yourself and be like, I'm going to do this at least 10 minutes a day and have fun and be curious. And I will say some things takes a little bit longer than others. It has deeper roots. Just keep going. It will happen. And I will say 10 minutes a day, you come a long way. So be who you want. There's only the now. Everything else is procrastination. And the reason I'm saying this is because we have this tendency of waiting. We think if we wait, when I have the money, when I lost the weight, when I'm stopped thinking like this, when. I know all the excuses. I did it too. I wanted to be a writer, but when I have the money, because then maybe I can self-publish, or when I have like, until the moment I was like, there's never going to be anything done if you keep holding it in the future. So I just started. And that's the thing, just start. Just start somewhere. The exercises, I just want to sum it up because then I think I can actually finish so you don't have to log in. Observe, weed out all the criticism of yourself and others. Contemplate, I would say 5 minutes daily. Be curious. Remember the victim ABC. Meditation, can't recommend it enough. You can find it on YouTube and there's so many wonderful guided meditations you can use. And breathe. Breathe, like really, not up here, down in the stomach. Breathe. And think about if you're reacting or responding. So I'm just going to move forward and then I will say thank you for listening. I think we're going to be locked off soon. The recording is going to be, I'm going to share it. So if there's any question, reach out to me. And other from that, I wish you well, and I hope you can use what I have shared today. And yes, thank you so much for participating. And I hope you got something from it. So thank you, and I will stop sharing. And I think Zoom will end just in a minute. So have a good night.